Good evening. Welcome to the Pearl Report. I'm Diana Lin. Hong Kong had its first Legislative Council election in 1985. The Basic Law promises universal suffrage for LegCo and the Chief Executive. But when will this be achieved? It's been an uphill battle for Hong Kong people to get that ballot in hand. We talked to two veteran politicians, Emily Lau and Regina Ip, to look at the vicissitudes of Hong Kong's democratization.
第三次中英聯絡小組傾過嘅事務啦。
麥理浩勳爵呼籲香港人
應該有權決定自己嘅前途。
Many of the pro-democracy parties and members, they are willing to talk, but it's not up to us. You know, it's them. It's always the people who are in power. If they do not change that sort of very, very antagonistic mentality, how can Hong Kong go forward?
I'm sure the central authorities do not believe that democracy is suitable for China. So the fact that they are willing to allow Hong Kong to have universal suffrage is already a big step forward.
The 22nd anniversary dinner of the Democratic Party.
我覺得民主黨咧係最緊要咧係去為香港咧係去推動民主。
但我希望我哋冷靜睇清楚。
劉慧卿女士，
本人劉慧卿以至誠據實聲明。
Politicians across the spectrum came to show support. Old friends and new acquaintances from Emily Lau's 30-year political career.
有一個遺憾咧，就係咧，我哋唔可以吸引更多嘅志同道合嘅，尤其是年青人、專業人士啊。
The gala coincided with the chief executive election. All the candidates came, including Regina Ip, who didn't win enough nominations.
建制派政黨梗係愛國愛港啦，但我哋係非常理性。
第三次中英聯絡小組傾過嘅事務。
係啊，鮮紅色啦、玫瑰紅啦、粉紅啦，
係好香添。
唔同區會一直即係你一定有你個樣啦。
From opening district offices to giving flowers on Mother's Day, Regina Ip offers advice to her protégés. She says if the pro-establishment camp wins big in an election, the central government will be less wary of democracy.
Democratization in the past 20 years has definitely radically changed the political environment in Hong Kong. The legislature is far more aggressive than before, far more willing to flex its muscle. Our political culture has also become more and more irreverent. It means we take much longer to implement developmental projects.
I think in our efforts in the last few decades, we have managed to do our best to defend civil liberties, human rights, rule of law, and independence of the judiciary, and also clean and non-corrupt government. These are values which are very close to the hearts of the Hong Kong people. We know there are serious erosions, but still, Hong Kong today is the freest city in the People's Republic of China.
Former Governor of Hong Kong, Sir Mary McLeod,
Graduating from a university of Southern California in the 70s, Emily Lau returned to Hong Kong to work as a journalist.
Flat areas, masses of sheep up there.
Oh.
Of their thinking on this crucial point.
After the Sino-British Joint Declaration was signed, British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher visited Hong Kong. Emily asked a hard-hitting question.
Prime Minister,
On Wednesday, you signed an agreement with China promising to deliver over 5 million people into the hands of a communist dictatorship. Is this morally defensible?
What do you think would have happened if we had not attempted to get an agreement? So the situation now is vastly better for Hong Kong, and I believe that most of the people, indeed the overwhelming number of people in Hong Kong, think the same. You may be a solitary exception.
Of course I disagree, and many journalists also disagree. That's why they all stood up one after another and asked the same question. Many Hong Kong people know they are Chinese, but they are afraid of communist rule. So when I ask that question, although many people feel I'm right, they dare not come on because I think that the question upset Beijing.
When Sir Murray went to Beijing in 1979, he learned that there would be no question of continuing British rule in Hong Kong after 1997. So I think on coming back, he instructed the Hong Kong government to go ahead with organizing elections, returning power to the people.
District administration began with a district board election in 1982. Regina Ip had a role.
咁喺呢度咧，我係訪問首席助理政務司葉劉淑儀。葉太啊，咁到目前為止嗰個點票工作進行得順唔順利咧？
非常之順利。而家我哋淨係有5個選區咧，全部都喺觀塘咧，係結果未有嘅啫。
After the creation of New China, a lot of immigrants came to Hong Kong from Shanghai and other parts of the mainland. A lot of people lost their homes and properties because of the communist takeover. Naturally, there is in Hong Kong deep-rooted fear of communism. There was considerable concern that as the SAR government would be appointed by Beijing, so to ensure that they are accountable to Hong Kong people and to make sure there are enough checks and balances against the assertion of Beijing's authority, they felt it imperative to go ahead with introducing democracy.
1991 saw the first direct election to the legislature. Emily Lau ran in New Territories East.
我自己係唔贊成一黨專政，我希望係有多黨制管治中國同埋管治香港。
I've always believed in democratic elections, so when it finally came about, I thought, yeah, I'll give it a try. And also, I am very, very passionate about public policies. And I also thought that I would win. Now, that's very important.
Governor Chris Patten took office in 1992, 2 years after the Basic Law was promulgated. It set out political reform for Hong Kong, but Patten proposed revamping electoral elections, widening voter base for functional constituencies for the election in 1995. Beijing strongly resisted.
Our legislature should be different from the one from 1999.
Emily Lau had an even more radical proposal: direct election for the whole legislature. In the end, Emily's amendment lost by 1 vote.
Beijing has always been reluctant to allow Hong Kong to have genuine self-rule, high degree of autonomy. They want to be able to control the government and control the legislature. That's why they won't let us have direct elections.
1 year before the handover, Emily Lau co-founded the Frontier.
The group Frontier managed to get together a few independent legislators at that time, and the people like it because one of our slogans was to stand firm. Stand firm on freedom, on rule of law.
Emily says the fight for democracy is to counter the central government's interference and repudiation of one country, 2 systems.
That's why when Deng Xiaoping said, we will take you back in 1997, but don't worry, we will not send communist cadres to run Hong Kong. Under one country, 2 systems, you will run Hong Kong yourself. So one country, 2 systems is a firewall which separates us from communist rule in the mainland.
10 years ago, Regina Ip also ran in an election. Regina says Beijing would not approve of democracy to counter the Communist Party.
If democracy ends up in turning Hong Kong into a de facto independent political entity, that is, the legislature could pass a motion to break away from China or to organize a referendum on independence, that would be an extremely worrying development. That won't be allowed by China,
What advice would you give to Beijing?
To make sure that our separate way of life, our separate systems and our core values continue unimpeded, and not to turn us into a part of China like other provinces. Otherwise, we'll lose our unique ability to contribute to the modernization of the country.
Emily has fought for democracy for 3 decades. She was in the front lines, but she also compromised. Regina hasn't been able to run for the top job, and for Hong Kongers, that ballot for the chief executive remains elusive. Why? When we come back.
Welcome back to the Pearl Report. One country, two systems. Which should come first? One country or two systems? That's a question confounding Hong Kong for 2 decades. Mainland officials have said repeatedly Hong Kong's authority comes absolutely from the central government. There's no residual power for Hong Kong. Hong Kongers have been waiting for 20 years for universal suffrage for the elections of the chief executive and the legislative council. How much longer?
The former Democratic Party chairwoman and ex-legislator Emily Lau enjoys hiking with fellow politicians who fought for democracy alongside her.
We have gone hiking many times in the past, and we like it. And it's a very good exercise and good to, improve relationships.
Emily was a convener of the Frontier, seen as a radical group before it merged with the Democratic Party in 2008. 4 years later, she was elected to head the party.
I think it's very important to consolidate because democracy is about power. If you are just have little group here, little group there, how can you really be powerful? We merge with people of similar minds.
During Emily's 4 years at the helm, youngsters chanted the Frontier slogans. They've become increasingly more radical, eventually morphing into advocating Hong Kong's independence. In today's polarized society, the Democratic Party is often criticized as being weak.
I think that most Hong Kong people accept Hong Kong is part of China, but they want Beijing to keep the promise of one country, two systems and a high degree of autonomy.
2 months ago, Regina Ip gave a talk at the school on Hong Kong's handover and identity. But youngsters today are more concerned about opportunities in their own futures.
I think young people tend to be cynical in their outlook and irreverent toward authorities. The younger people, they have had no experience of war and destruction. So a lot of us don't recognize we are already enjoying the dividend of peace after World War II and the protection of the People's Liberation Army.
15 years ago, Hong Kong saw heated debates about legislating Article 23 of the Basic Law. Regina, then Secretary for Security, was tasked with promoting the move. She says her pro-Beijing stance was often ridiculed. Chinese university students once gave her a banner mocking her loyalty to China.
Looking back, giving me that banner was really no big deal. I didn't take any offense. Their form of protest, actually, compared to the sort of student behavior, the behavior of some students these days was really very mild.
A year after Article 23 was shelved came the first public consultation on political reform and a debate on what constitutes patriotism.
The
organizers must be unpatriotic because they are anti-national security.
In subsequent discussions about political reform, patriotism was always broached.
Can't accept anti-Beijing person as chief executive.
Some are patently anti-patriotic, some very avowedly patriotic, but not necessarily really share love of the country in their hearts. That's why the central authorities always say they have to listen to your words and watch your deeds over a period to determine who are the real patriots.
Regina failed twice to run for chief executive. Although she's hailed as an ardent patriot, she never secured enough nominations. Even Pan-Democratic Election Committee members felt sorry for her.
Do you
find the election system unfair?
I think it is restrictive, I think a lot of Hong Kong people would like to have a vote, particularly young people. I think this system, even if continued, might not ensure the election of a pro-China candidate, because I think pan-democratic supporters will win more and more votes on the election committee.
Well, Beijing doesn't trust Hong Kong. That's why they say, oh, I give you one person, one vote, but I have to control the candidates.
Article 23 spells out very clearly that the Hong Kong SAR shall, on its own, prohibit certain offences which endanger national security. It's a duty on our part, which we have not yet fulfilled. So if we have completed our obligation, I think that would enhance mutual trust between Hong Kong and Beijing, and that might pave the way for more smoother introduction of universal suffrage.
In 2010, Beijing decided for political reform, geographical and functional constituencies continued to be half-half in LegCo. Pan-Democrats rejected this and were poised to vote it down. Democratic Party legislators Albert Ho, Emily Lau and Chang Man Kwong then met with the Beijing Liaison Office. They agreed to add district council supersedes, so every voter gets 2 votes.
In the past, I always asked for 100% democracy, and Beijing said no. When Beijing agreed to give one person 2 votes, it's not 100% democracy. I said, okay, because all these years I've been asking for 100%, and now I support something that is not. But I think that is good for Hong Kong to take a step forward. So you will think that, oh, I'm reneging on what I've said, so I apologize.
The August 31st, 2014 framework of the National People's Congress Standing Committee gave Hong Kong universal suffrage to elect the chief executive, but candidates must get 600 nominations to run. This was widely criticized as restrictive, precipitating a mass political confrontation.
And I think many of the pro-democracy parties and members, they are willing to talk, but it's not up to us. It's them. It's always the people who are in power who have to initiate such things. It's not for us. All we do is we go to the central government liaison office to protest. It is something within them that many are persona non grata. They don't want to have anything to do with us.
Occupy Central has certainly polarized our community. into the yellow camp and the blue camp. These divisions remain, and it has deepened Beijing's suspicions and uneasiness about democratic elections, that they could be very divisive, very insulting, very bitter.
And maybe that's what Beijing wants. They learn from the British, divide and rule. You don't want them to consolidate, because once they get consolidated, they're very powerful. They may be up against you. So they want you to be all split up, always arguing.
Under one country, two systems, upholding the rule of law requires trust, and efficient governance requires a public mandate. The basic law states our way of life will not change for 50 years, and we're almost halfway through.
The central government grants power to the HKSAR, not ceding power. Under no circumstance is a high degree of autonomy an excuse to challenge the central government's power.
Or those people who slam China for being undemocratic, or hope to use Hong Kong as a base for democratizing China, I think they are really very naive. Central authorities do not believe that democracy is suitable for China. So the fact that they are willing to allow Hong Kong to have universal suffrage is already a big step forward. It's important to be pragmatic and count our blessings.
Beijing has always been reluctant to allow Hong Kong to have genuine self-rule, high degree of autonomy. They want to be able to control the government and control the legislature. That's why they won't let us have direct elections. We want to have the right to elect the government, and we want to preserve our freedoms. If you have a government which is more willing to listen to the people's voices, then I think the very, very angry feeling will subside.
It takes two to tango, and to move forward, we always need political compromise on both sides. It hinges on mutual trust. Hong Kong people trusting the central authorities, and the central authorities trusting Hong Kong that we will not turn democracy into a breakaway movement. I hope the central government will give the next administration more leeway, more freedom to move forward.
People worry Hong Kong will become another Chinese city. Central authorities have stressed repeatedly they don't wish to see that. Two systems fall under one country, and preserving two separate systems is believed to be in the best interest of the nation. Well, thanks for watching our show. It will be re-aired on Monday, Tuesday and Saturday, as well as online and on mobile apps. Until next time, from the Pearl Report team, good night, good luck and good health.